Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeff Jensen, Field Coordinator and Program Manager with Trees Forever. I'd like to welcome you all here today for our fantastic webinar featuring Tom Vorse with USDA APHIS. Just a real quick rundown. Again, you should be able to hear us and see us. We're going to cancel our cameras here in just a moment to make the presentation full screen, but we cannot hear you or see you. And so the way to communicate with us is in the questions tab. So if you'll expand the questions tab, that's how you can ask a question by typing it in there or communicating with us. Tom has a little bit of feedback he's looking for throughout his presentation. So that's how we'll be able to communicate. This will be recorded and we'll have it available in our library of webinars as well as eventually on YouTube. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Debbie Flegel.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Debbie Flegel, Program Manager and Field Coordinator for Trees Forever in Illinois. And I would like to thank you for attending our webinar today. We're going to be learning all about emerald ash borer, management and treatment options. I'd like to introduce Tom Vorse. Tom has worked for the USDA for 20 years, first taking up a position in Fort Myers, Florida with the exotic fruit fly trapping program. Shortly thereafter, he transferred to Wilmington, North Carolina, where he worked at the Maritime Port, as well as a small international airport. He was responsible for certifying agricultural exports of lumber, tobacco, and cottonseed, among many other commodities. He also monitored ships and aircrafts for incoming regulated garbage and assisted in numerous military returns from overseas, ensuring that vehicles and gear were clear of foreign soil and infestations. In 2003, he transferred back to the newly formed Customs and Border Protection in Wilmington, where he served until coming back to the USDA in 2007, after accepting a position with the Emerald Ash Borer Program in Swansea, Illinois, where he still serves today. So with that, I would like to introduce Tom and thank him for giving us this presentation today. And as Jeff mentioned, if you have any questions throughout, please type them in the questions box. We will be monitoring those throughout. With that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Debbie. First of all, I'd just kind of like to know where people are from and what kind of EAB experience they might have. So if you can type that in the chat box, just interested to know who we're talking to here. So that is a picture of the emerald ash borer that we're going to be talking about today. It's kind of a cool looking insect, but obviously not a very good one. So ash, the emerald ash borer only attacks ash trees. It attacks just about all species of ash, but their ash trees or ash wood is used in a lot of cabinetry and furniture, flooring. Native Americans use it in basket making. There's one other use that might be of significance to, I know I'm down here near St. Louis, but Debbie and Jeff are up near Chicago. So what other significant use of ash do you think that there is?
Baseball bats, 100%.
Yeah, that's it. Of course, I'm down here near St. Louis, so I had to put that one in, but apologies to the Chicago crowd. So yeah, so baseball bats, it's ash is hard enough to hit the ball far, but not so brittle that the bat shatters. So they say there's a large sweet spot in the bat that you can send the ball far. So as you can see, ash is widely scattered over most of the U.S. The market for ash fell to the floor during the USDA regulatory time for the emerald ash borer, and it was not uncommon for timber cutters or loggers to leave the ash in the woods. It wasn't even worth bringing out. Later, once the states set their own protocols, we could send the ash for export out of the country to the East Coast, but if anything was going to the West Coast, it had to be fumigated prior to shipment. They didn't want to take the chance of anything coming off of a log or anything, going through those uninfected states. So, but the market is coming back now, and ash is still it's either treated or debarked before shipment. Some ways to further identify ash are these canoe-shaped seed pods that you see out in the trees this time of year. They kind of have a smiley face leaf scar, and many of them have like on the right, call them like a chocolate chip bud on them. It's also the twigs are kind of almost square shaped or triangular shaped than round, like many trees. So when any tree is in trouble or under attack from an insect or anything, fungus or anything, it has basically two defense mechanisms. One are the basal sprouts that you see, just sprouting around the base of the tree, trying to grow other stems there. And the other thing is epicormic shoots. You'll see just a lot of new branches coming off of mostly the trunk and some other main branches as well. So, but you can tell ash. Let me go back a slide or two here. You see it's got a compound leaf, normally 5 to 9 leaflets per leaf, and they're arranged in an opposite pattern from each other. And the bark is also have this diamond-shaped bark to it. So they're pretty easily identifiable. So the emerald ash borer is not a problem because of what they are, but because of where they are. Like over in China, where they have natural predators, it's really not a problem. But here, they just don't have any natural enemies. So it was originally under federal quarantine and eradication programs. Now we have kind of lost that battle, so we're shifting to managed, the managed program using biocontrol agents, and we'll get more into that. So EAB was first found in the United States in Detroit, Michigan in 2002. It had probably been there since the 1990s. The thing is about this tree, or about this insect, when it attacks a tree, it's normally been there for 3 to 5 years before you notice any symptoms. After that, decline is pretty rapid, but the initial attack is kind of slow. So it probably came to the U.S. in some solid wood packing material. The emerald ash borer are not known to be, big flyers or anything, but they're more commonly moved around by people moving firewood and other things that the insect is on. So a coworker of mine just last week saw one on the windshield of his car when he was parked at a busy shopping center with no ash around. So he must have, kind of blown in on the wind, I would think, on that one. So, but they get around, like I said, not necessarily by flying, but by other means. So right now they're like the slide says, they're in 35 states and 5 Canadian provinces. So it's spread pretty rapidly. Let's see, that the emerald ash borer, we spend millions of dollars annually to manage it, but it does about $1 billion in damage. And currently there's $300 billion in ash products in industry at risk. I believe this picture is from Toledo, Ohio. That's where I grew up. As you can see, the trees had to have been healthy before to get the size that they are now, but they've been pretty well devastated. So that's what it can do. This is the actual size of an emerald ash borer. They're small. They're hard to see in flight or anything. Some of the other insects that USDA is working to eradicate, like the Asian longhorn beetle, those are, 1.5 inches, 2 inches long and black and white. They're kind of easy to see in flight. You can detect them a lot earlier than these can. These blend in well with the leaves, and they don't. Actually, they're not adults for very long. So let's see here. Usually when a tree begins to show symptoms, like I said, the insect has been present there for a number of years. And as you can see in this graph, it after that time of original symptoms, it doesn't take long for the tree to be devastated. So some of the symptoms that you might see in an ash tree that are, is being affected by the emerald ash borer. On the left, you see an ash tree that has some crown dieback, and the insect normally kind of works from the top down in the tree. And also leaf yellowing, you see that on the right. Some other symptoms you see are this bark splits, like on the left, and this bark split in particular has the very distinctive S-shaped feeding gallery that the emerald ash borer has. There's kind of a couple telltale signs from the emerald ash borer that if you see that on an ash tree, it's the emerald ash borer that gets it. So on the left are, like I said, these S-shaped feeding galleries, and on the right, down near the bottom, you see a D-shaped exit hole. Most all other insects have a round hole, but these are always D-shaped. So, like I said, a telltale sign. Something else you might see is woodpecker damage. Obviously, the woodpeckers want to eat the larva, live larva. On the left, you see some woodpecker blonding, that's called. It's kind of where they chip away the bark around their hole that they're going after. But you'll see a lot of woodpecker damage on an infested tree. So the life cycle of a emerald ash borer, they're adults for about 2 weeks for the males and maybe up to 4 weeks for females. They feed on the ash leaves, but this is not harmful, or I mean, it's not good for the trees, but this is not what kills the trees at all. So they'll feed on ash leaves, they mate, and then the female will lay her eggs in the bark of the tree. And down on the right, you can see some eggs, emerald ash borer eggs, about 1 millimeter in circumference maybe. And so the adult stages along the top there, you got the single EAB feeding on leaves, mating, egg laying, you see the eggs. Now down on the bottom, heading to the left, we have the larva. This is what actually does the damage. And you can see this larva, are already forming its S-shaped gallery. So like I said, this is what does the damage. Further to the left, you see the pupa, and then on the right, or I'm sorry, raising back to the top, that D-shaped exit hole. So here's 3 instars of larvae. They have 4, but this photo is of 3, and you can see how big they are. They have a very distinct bell-shaped pattern to the body segments. And so they feed on this cambium layer, just under the bark, the xylem and phloem that carries nutrients. And like I said, that's where they feed. And so when they get that distinctive S-shaped gallery, when they get that, so on the right, you see a lot of S-shaped galleries. So when that goes all the way around a tree, that's called girdling, and it's only a matter of time before that tree will die. So, like I said, this is what does the damage. This is a purple trap. There's really no other name for it or anything. It's just what the USDA and many states used and still use to determine the presence and density of emerald ash borer in an area. So if you see those, that's what's going on. They're kind of tied up in the trees and in the canopy. They're very sticky and not not fun. So so the USDA's control efforts began with the removal of host trees. That's what we normally do when an invasive species is found. We draw a radius around, you know, ground zero there and take out any hosts that were found in that area. Of course, like I said, this insect, by the time you notice it, it's moved on. So that quickly, you know, became not feasible. There were just, you know, too many, and they were too far ahead of us at the time. So we went to a regulatory phase of control where there's massive public service announcements like billboards and radio spots and things like that. We trained industry professionals to be on the lookout, let us know where they were, that kind of thing. We worked with landscapers and firewood producers, sawmills and loggers, all to educate them on what to look for the emerald ash borer. Most of these businesses signed compliance agreements to work alongside the USDA and the states, you know, to help our efforts. And it was only recently that we federally deregulated the emerald ash borer, and now each state is working on its own regulations. But they're working together so that they're, at least in regions, they're all the rules are similar. So another option for treatment for the emerald ash borer is our chemical treatments, and we'll get more into this later also. But you can see 3 types of chemical applications here. Top left is a basal injections. It's kind of like giving a tree a shot. And on the right, you see a soil drench. It's called. There's just kind of treating the soil around the tree that'll be taken up systemically through the roots. And then on the bottom is a aerial spray that is for adults in season. So with any type of treatment, timing is everything. So
so a question has come up from Sally on how often do we need treatment on the ash trees if we choose to treat them? And that is a question best, I think, for Tom. I can tell you what I know. Typically, if we're doing something like the injections, we will go ahead and treat that tree, inject that tree, and then essentially monitor. So some of the treatments do have a little bit of residual effect. There's one in particular, I shouldn't say it because I may misspeak, that maybe has up to 2 years residual. Most of the other ones I think are annual, but we'll get that in the queue here for Tom once he rejoins us.
Risks of biocontrol, it's very expensive to start. There's a lot of study that has to go into, you know, the host, the native or the non-native pest, and then you know, you have to look for natural enemies. And if you don't find those, then you have to go overseas to find the natural enemies over there. So anyway, we'll, like I said, get into more of that also, but it's not quick or easy to start a biocontrol program by any means, but they do work. Some of the steps to begin a biocontrol program, it begins with studying the pest biology. Like I said, then you look for non-natives or native natural enemies. We didn't have those here, so nothing. You know, we had to look in China, Russia, and Mongolia is where the emerald ash borer is native, and so we got their native pests. So those studies or those insects have to be studied and released at suitable sites here in the U.S. Okay, so there's 4 types of parasitoids that have been approved for the biological control of emerald ash borer. I'm not even going to attempt to say all these, but the the Ubius in the upper left, that's the one that we are currently using out of this office. We've done our first release last week. We have another one coming up on Thursday. So this is an insect that attacks the eggs on the bark of a tree. All the others attack the larva themselves. So this one's kind of different. So like I said, we went to China, Mongolia, and Russia to find these insects and study them over there. They were brought back here. Our lab is in Brighton, Michigan, where they were tested on their hosts here, and then mass reared so that we can deploy these to several states and counties. So because they came from such a wide range, Russia all the way down to Mongolia, their natural habitat or where they're used to living is in line with the United States. Here you see the United States, it's got the 40th parallel there. So anything south of there, you can expect for the emerald ash borer to have 2 life cycles per year sometimes. Anything north is only going to have 1, and so that determines kind of the type of insect that we will use for biocontrol. So to get an area or a stand of trees to be accepted into the release programs, we like to partner with governmental agencies, universities, and environmental organizations that own land if we can. We do this because we require access for 2 years to release. There will be, we might be there every week or every 2 weeks throughout the summer, releasing insects. And then after that, we need to go back for 2 years to recover we trap our own biocontrol agents to see how their population has established. So for the sites that we consider, we look for a verifiable EAB presence. Generally not hard to do if you have ash trees that are in trouble. So like I said, we verify EAB. We look on public property. We like to have all different phases of EAB damage and all different size trees. The different types of phases of EAB damage, we have a scale that ranges from 1 to 5. It's based on the canopy cover. You can see 1 shows practically no effect of any damage whatsoever or any infestation, whereas 5, everything's been pretty well decimated. Obviously 2, 3, and 4 are somewhere in between. So when we release insects, there's 3 different methods for dispersal. The first one on the left over there is actually what we deployed just recently here. That is for the Ubius. They're actually larvae in like a medicine bottle, and they will escape through that gauze cover when they're ready. The second one there is a bolt, they call that. That's just like a little piece of wood that larvae are living in, and again, they will emerge when they're ready. The third one, I'm sorry, on the right is those are adults in a. It's nothing more than a solo cup that the lid taped on. We just released those. So they've been released so far in 20 states, 125 counties. You can see where they're kind of getting established and they're doing their job. It's working. So so part of a program is going back and evaluating the effectiveness. You have to, like I said, trap your own beneficial insects now. So this ensures that the population is present and that they're surviving the winters and feeding on the hosts, which, in this case is the emerald ash borer. Of course, there's two main factors that determine the success of any program like this, and that's the survival of ash and a reduction of EAB density. So integration with chemical pesticides are being researched now and in many areas, especially in New York, Wisconsin, and Colorado. They have stands of black ash and blue ash that they're testing. They have test sites and control sites that they're testing with biocontrol alongside of chemical treatment. So before considering a treatment strategy, basically, if EAB has been found within 30 miles, your trees are eventually going to be at risk. And as you mentioned, Jeff, it's not just a one and done treatment. You have to retreat that tree time and again, sometimes annually, sometimes, like I said, up to every 3 years or so. But it takes a commitment. So if you choose to treat, obviously follow all pesticide labels, and you're going to have to contact an arborist or a certified pesticide applicator for most of them. Obviously, we want to protect the environment, so you don't want to treat trees within 25 feet of a body of water. You don't want to treat before a heavy rainfall is predicted within the next 24 hours. You don't want to apply that aerial spray when it's windy. Then you'll get pesticide drift that may, negatively affect surface water, kids, pets, flowering plants, and pollinators, and things like that. Use only the recommended dosages to prevent excessive leaching in the soil. And again, because of leaching, you don't want to use when the soil is frozen or oversaturated. So there's the 4 different types of chemical sprays. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but soil drenches or injections. The systemic insecticides applied as trunk injections. That's that basal injection. Like I said, it's almost like a shot in the arm for the tree there. Trunk sprays and cover sprays, again, are both the aerial things that they will affect the adults, and just like all of this is, timing is everything, but especially if you're just spraying for those adults, because they're only adults for 2 to 4 weeks. So you have to be out there. It normally takes at least two sprays to knock them out, but they are effective. So it's all about what life cycle they're in is what we're trying to do, or what we're trying to attack. I don't expect you to be able to read this very well, but it's just to show you how many different types of insecticides there are out there approved for emerald ash borer. Only the bottom 4 are for use by homeowners. Everything else needs a certified pesticide applicator.
So
like
where can we find something like this?
I'm sorry, what that list? Or
yeah, is that something that could be Googled, or is that a put together list that you put together, or another entity?
I did not put this together. I think I got this out of a emeraldashborer.info website. I believe that's where that one.
Thank you.
Either that or the emerald ash borer treatment manual. So, but either way, it does mention some of those that you mentioned. There's that triage in there. Again, that's only used by pesticide applicators, but anyway. So far, the results of soil applied treatments are mixed, except for the treatment of larger trees. They seem to be responding well to this type. Larger meaning 15 to 22 inch in diameter. The trunk injections, that was what your question was about. This particular injection lasts up to 3 years, and it's been the most successful. Other trunk injections had kind of mixed results as well, but it's that emectin benzoate. Like I said, that's shown promising results. The basal sprays are effective, but only when they're applied at the highest labeled rate. So it kind of takes a heavy dose, but they do seem to prove effective. So my other question for the attendees here is this an ash tree?
So Tom, is the picture that we're looking at here, is it the same? There's two pictures, one of a canopy and one with some leaves and something on it. Is that the same tree?
Yes, yeah, that's just a close-up of the canopy that you see there. So that something is a chestnut. So no, this is a look-alike tree, just to kind of keep people on their toes. So it's like I said, there's just like everything in nature, there's ash trees, and then there's plenty of trees that look like ash trees that are not. So this is one. Hickory is another, and same thing with the emerald ash borer. You'll have lookalikes there, but like I said, there's several telltale signs, that D-shaped hole and the S-shaped feeding gallery, that give it away. So a question that I get a lot is will treatments have a harmful effect on woodpeckers or honeybees? Woodpeckers feed on live larvae. The basal injections, the soil injections, are systemic, so it goes up through that xylem and phloem in that cambium layer of the tree. It is much more effective on the larva than it is on the woodpecker. So it will, once it kills the larva, the woodpecker is not interested in it. They only want live larvae anyway. So, and another thing about these pesticides, they don't bioaccumulate the way that fat soluble insecticides do, like DDT. That was one of the problems with that, is that predators would eat infected insects and then build up insecticide in them, and then when they got eaten by something else, it just kept growing throughout the food chain. But like I said, that won't happen with these. And so ash trees are typically wind pollinated, so they're not a nectar source for bees. Ash flowers are produced in early spring. They generally only last for a couple days. So honeybees won't be a problem, except for pesticide drift, if you're using that aerial spray that we talked about. I put this slide in here. It was probably produced by the chemical manufacturers, because I don't think it gives quite enough credence to the biocontrol agents doing their part. But it does show that biocontrol and insecticides work together the best to knock these things out. So we'd rather have but like I said, them working together to result in deaths of the EAB instead of the ash trees. So again, working biocontrol and pesticides together to enhance ash survival. It's difficult doing these tests sometimes, because ash seeds don't last that long, and it takes 30 or 40 years for an ash tree to mature. So it's advantageous to save some of these large ash trees for reproduction before, hopefully we can get those to last through this integrated means of treatment, so that we'll have a constant source of seedlings to regenerate our ash. This slide shows the growth of the parasitoids in, once they've been released. In a 3-year time span, they're doing quite well, and the EAB is going down in these areas. This is actually from New York, I believe, that so like I said, the biocontrol is being established. EAB presence is going down, ash is surviving. That's something else about biocontrol programs. They're not really designed to eliminate the pest. We're not going to get rid of it, but we're going to control it so that not all ash die, not all ash are affected or affected to the point that they die before they have a chance to repopulate. And again, the challenge is just like everything else. You got to take the bad with the good. Here's what I meant about the ash trees. The studies like this take a long time to see the results. And then any results you get, you have to figure out if it was the insecticide or the biocontrol or something else that might have affected the trees. So that's pretty much all I have, but I want to end on a lighter note. Let's see here. So this happened in the field the other day. I saw this ash tree in the distance and saw that it was in trouble. You can see the crown die back, and as you walk up to it, we saw this epicormic shoots and basal sprouting going on. Typical signs of EAB. We didn't know what it was until we got a little bit closer, and we found out that it was beaver damage, and so we called that the Eastern American beaver. So anyway, that's not what we expected when we saw the ash tree in the distance, but anyway, so that's
EAB,
so,
I love it.
yeah.
Well, Tom, we
So,
certainly have a whole slew of questions here, so why don't we just get into them? Someone wants to know, how are cities tracking chemical applications, and what is the permit cost? Matt responds that they're going with only direct injection, no soil drench. Any thoughts or anything you've heard, I guess, in your neck of the woods?
no, I work pretty closely with our parks department in our town, but and so they're aware of any biocontrol efforts that we do. But as far as chemical treatments, we have not done any for.
I think we might have just lost Tom again. So Matt, great question in terms of how cities are tracking the chemical applications. That's something that I'm not real familiar with, but something I'm going to look into, maybe at Cedar Rapids and some of the places that might have some of that going on. I wonder if some of the cities are even getting involved with some of that, or if it's just a hands-off approach. I was told anecdotally, you know, when it comes to treating these ash trees, it's really about cost and then how valuable is that tree. We're going to lose most of the ash trees that we have out there. But if it's a particularly valuable tree for shade, or one that your child planted or for sentimental reasons, whatever, having it treated on the cost side is going to be anywhere from $10 to $20 per inch diameter. So it's not going to be a cheap thing, as Tom kind of referenced. The other thing is that, you know, the chemicals that are being used and the water quality concerns, as he referenced, someone put it to me like, if we had a block of trees and some of them were ash and some weren't, when we start looking at treating trees, you know, to meet water quality standards, we might only be able to treat 2, 3, or 4 in a whole block. And so that is something that needs to be on folks' radar as treatments become options. But I like the fact that you're going with only direct injections and not the soil drench. From what I've been told, that is a little bit more direct. Oh, and Tom is back with us, so I can quit talking and stalling. Tom, from an expert's position.
Nice song and dance there. Yeah, to answer that question, I don't know of any requirements to let a city know that you're doing injections in the city or anything like that. I mean, obviously, if it were a city tree, I would think that would be suitable. But for a homeowner to do, you know, if they were interested in treating their own trees, that's not necessary, unless the pesticide applicator does it on their own.
Another question here: can EAB migrate to other types of trees?
No, that's the one thing about this. It only seems to attack ash trees. There's almost a dozen different types of ash trees that are affected, but only ash.
Now, Tom, I had heard through the grapevine, and this might have been a year or two ago, that maybe white fringed tree could be a potential host, or any truth to that?
I did. In my research for this, I did see white fringe, and I'm just not familiar with that tree. So I stuck with what I knew, what I had been taught before, is that you know, all ash, but only ash, but possibly that white fringe as well, whatever that is.
And Tom, someone once asked me, I've given a couple of lower level EAB presentations, certainly not to the depth and scope of this, but someone asked me, well, how do they figure out if it's only ash trees that they're really attacking? And my response was, and I had heard a forester maybe say this, that they basically took large garbage cans, put the EAB in there, and fed them other tree species, and they didn't take to any other ones. So it's just EAB. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, that's part of that host specific study that they do in Brighton, Michigan. When they brought the bugs over, or the insects over to Brighton from overseas, they try feeding it everything, and it seemed to be ash specific. So
okay, great. Oh, another question coming in here. So any certain time frame for treatment? Is it more effective, such as spring versus summer? So could you maybe talk through that a little bit?
Most treatments seem to be done recommended in the spring. Obviously, any aerial spray you want during flight season. And again, that's only 2 to 4 weeks, so that would have to be done in the spring. But unless you're in the south and they have 2 life cycles per year, then there would be another opportunity. But most applications are done in the spring. Again, on the pesticide label, it'll tell you when, but some they are treated multiple times a year, and those, spring, summer, fall. Okay.
But for the treatments to work, again, other than the sprays where we're looking to spray the adults in that very narrow time frame,
Right.
with the injections, they can be effective even spring through summer, or do we essentially miss a part of that life cycle if we're treating in the late summer or fall, for instance?
Well, I think they're larvae for 300 to 345 days, so
you'll hit them in there some.
Yeah, basically, exactly. The anything but you omitted the basal spray or the aerial spray. So yeah, anything else is going to be systemic, and will be in that cambium layer. So that's it, like you said, it'll get them one way or another.
Got it. And then another follow-up question. So when we talked about the time frame, spring versus summer, would we be treating these before they even leaf out, or typically after they've leafed out?
And again, for the basal injections, as long as it's in the tree, or a soil injection, as long as it's systemically being taken up by the tree, it should continue for the time period that it will be affected or effective for the EAB larva.
So maybe the real question there is it depends on if it needs to be leafed out or not, on how good your pesticide applicator is at identifying trees without leaves on them, right?
That sounds good. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to treat the wrong tree.
We've heard stories.
Yeah, I can imagine. I contacted one treatment facility, or pesticide applicator around town here, and it was about $300 for tree treatment. So it's not something that you just you don't want to treat the wrong trees.
Indeed. Any other questions folks might have? Well, Tom, one of my questions is what happens after? So we here in Iowa and Illinois are kind of in the midst of EAB. It's still in the spreading phase. We still have lots of ash trees standing. I haven't been to Michigan and other places. So is it more or less over there? Are they still in this mass wave of EAB? What's kind of the status out there? And then what happens after? We had things like well, Dutch elm disease, and now we have at least trees that are resistant to Dutch elm disease. Will we always be faced with this pressure? Will the bugs eventually die off and go away? What's your prognosis there?
Well, like I said, the purpose or goal of a biocontrol program, like I said, isn't to get rid of or eradicate the pest. It's just to mitigate it and slow it down, something so that it's just something that we can live with. I guess in the USDA, we look at it from an export. You know, we want our wood products to be exported overseas for GDP. So we are trying to protect that. So those will have to continue to be treated before, either debarked or fumigated before they are shipped overseas and sold. But locally, there's still live ash trees that look good in Michigan, but they're just getting fewer and further in between. Where you're located in like you said, kind of the front end of the spread. Hopefully we get these things, get the biocontrol deployed and treat some of the larger trees to save our seedlings or our seed production. And we should hopefully still have ash. It's just not as much. And like that picture I showed from Toledo, it's a common street tree that municipalities used to use for parks and along streets. That it's just it was kind of a low maintenance, pretty tree. We just didn't foresee this coming. So locally we had the St. Louis Arch. Those grounds used to be all ash trees, and they kind of preemptively took them out. Maybe they saw what was coming, and but they redid the grounds over there, replaced them with different species.
Diversity, diversity, diversity. Well, I think we'll end on that note, Tom. We're at noon. I really want to thank you for lending your expertise here today. This has been fantastic. Tom, again, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.
All right, thanks. You too.